Welcome back, dweebs, to a special episode of Dweeb. This was going to be in our horror corner. We have a guest with us today. Unstoppable JoJo is here to discuss the entire Saw franchise with us. She has just recently released a top 10 films and traps video. You guys should all go check that out. But I'm going to let her tell you more about it. You hear enough of me every day. So, JoJo, welcome and thank you. First and foremost, how are you? And then let the folks know a little bit about this project you just put out.
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me. It's been, quite a bit of months that we've been trying to do this. As far as my video goes, this was a while in the making, unfortunately. And the reason I say that is because a lot of my audience was like, when is the Saw video coming? So for those of you who are new, I am considered very controversial in the online space because I am multi-disabled, but I also don't let that stop me, hence my name. But I pretty much can relate to a lot of different things as far as like my perception is different. So that's why a lot of people wanted my viewpoint as far as the intricacy, the concepts, and the filmmaking of Saw. I've been watching it since I was a teenager, so 20 years in the making is quite a stretch for a horror film, nonetheless. But I just felt like, doing the way that I did the video, and mind you, I understand that a lot of people are like, I don't know if I can do that because it's an hour and 25 minutes, but according to a lot of people that have watched the video, a lot of people told me that it's enjoyable. So if you are up for it and you want to hear the review before you get into each movie, I don't specifically go into every movie because these are my top 10s, but basically I give you like the likes and dislikes of the people, like the movies that basically went from 10 to 1, so 10 being the least liked and then 1 obviously being the favorite. So, and as far as the traps, my likings of the traps are different than the majority of people. Like, I don't know, I couldn't tell you how many Saw ranking videos I've had to witness, but I know that mine are not common. Basically, I have hot takes compared to the average person. So if you guys want to get into that, if you have an hour or 25 minutes of your free time, feel free to look into that. So, yeah.
Yeah, definitely do that. And I can also confirm it's got a nice break point in the middle. So you can get your rankings first and then come back later to have the traps ranked if you would like. That is actually how I did it. I went through, listened to your top 10, kind of compared those to mine, and then came back and watched the traps portion of the video. So what we will not be doing here today is stepping all over that hour 20-minute video and going over our rankings. All right. So if you want to hear JoJo's rankings, you can go there. But we will, use her knowledge and extended research that she did in making that video to kind of push our conversation forward. We'll talk about different elements, what we were looking at, what we enjoyed about the films, what we didn't enjoy. And then at some point, I will have to come back, and maybe that'll be a part 3 of this whole thing and give you all my rankings. I have a loose set right now, but I want to go back and give everything the classic rewatch once over, which is, is going to lead me to my first question for you, JoJo, because I was wondering for myself, since I'm going to go back and rewatch all 10, or maybe if there's somebody who somehow just hasn't watched these movies yet and they're trying to figure out, should I get into this? If you were going to watch them all or rewatch them all, would you go by release date and start with Saw and work all the way back? Or would you, because of the different prequels and things that happened, would you watch it in sort of the chronological order in which events happen. What would be your move there?
I've been asked this question so many times because of last year's release, which was Saw 10. So I had a lot of people ask me, do I need to start over? Because a lot of people dropped off between 3 and 5. That's when a lot of people were like, I can't do it anymore. Shit is getting old. So what I told people was, fuck it, start with Saw 10. Start with Saw 10. You will get the premise of everything that's going on. And then when you go from 1 to 9, everything will make sense. That way, and I know that's controversial and that's a hot take, but that way you will have more of a love for the first Saw. Because to me, watching Saw 10 was no different than watching the first Saw. Meaning, there's no differentiating between the two. That's how good Saw 10 was. You know what I mean?
I hadn't thought of it that way, but when you mention it, it also, like, the pace of the movie feels more like the first Saw than it does any of the sequels, because some might call it a slow burn. Not me, but I don't mind a slow burn. So maybe it is. But yeah, you spend a lot more time in the scenes and with characters in Saw 10. So that's an interesting one, because for me, I mentioned this a little bit in our pre-show. The first one has always been my favorite and probably always will be, but it's more about the behind the scenes and the making of than it even is about the movie itself. Just knowing a couple of poor college kids, basically first time filmmakers, how can we keep most of our movie in one room and do some of it in this police office, and just the way that they were able to craft this incredible story with the twist ending. And then, of course, as we all know, the twist became part of the franchise, and the gore was added later. So it was nice to me to have sort of a return to a little bit of a slower pace. But what I think is interesting, what Saw 10 does that people like us that watched these when they first came out and followed along throughout, is it gives you a new perspective on John Kramer from the beginning, rather than getting it 10 movies in where you kind of knew what he was all about. But Saw 10 really kind of makes you say, damn. I get where this guy is coming from. So it would really probably change the way you view a lot of at least the first 3 or 4 movies where he's heavily involved. So I might do that. I may take your word on that one.
Well, with that answer, I got I want to say at least 20 people to watch Saw 10. So you're welcome, Lionsgate. And a lot of people watching the Saw 10. I knew a lot of people that watched it like 5 times.
Warner Brothers is going to call you next. Careful.
Can you promote this?
Like somebody, that bald kid won't stop talking shit about us. We need somebody to balance us out.
Yeah, I did see that video, so I know what you're talking about.
Whoopsies. I don't know why they won't return my calls. So while we're still on the 10th film, this is another question that I had for you. There has been an 11th film announced for sometime in 2025. With that being said, are you excited for the 11th film? I know how much you liked Saw 10. Was it sort of, sometimes I feel like a story hits a point where it's nice and finished, and to continue it might make things, it might sort of law of diminishing returns, that eventually, and I think this franchise, you could argue that it's happened a couple of times already where it's gotten worse, and then something has come back. In this case, Saw 10 was an improvement over some of the previous movies. But would this have been a good place to just end the franchise, or are you happy to see it continue?
Honestly, well, if you look at the behind the scenes, so the first 3 movies made ton. The first 3 movies are like the writers, the filmmakers, everybody that's in the behind the scenes made Saw 10. After
Right.
that, it was interchanged and intertwined, and Spiral was actually made by Chris Rock
Yeah.
because he had the love for the love of the film, right? So
Yep.
if you're having a bunch of people intertwine, it makes sense to keep going with the franchise. But that's just me, as a love for film and a love for um, filmography. And me being an artist, I can't help myself. But I think the reason that people are saying let's call it quits is because they're not really integrated the way me and you are, or the way that most Saw fans are. We have a different perception as far as this film because we grew up with it. Like, let's be real, we were raised with this film. Um, but they're doing an 11th and 12th installment, if you haven't heard that one. And the
Ooh.
reason
Okay.
that they are integrating more films is because we're going to go back in time because we now know the main reason behind Jigsaw, the main reason why John Kramer did what he did. So now we're going to go back to if you remember back, we still have Detective Kaufman. We have to know about. We still
Hmm.
have Jigsaw's ex. I can never remember her freaking name. The one that
Right.
lost a baby and everything, and that's what they named the puppet after, Billy.
Yep.
Um, and then like there are if you go back into the movies, you're gonna have to keep in mind a lot of these people that are gone. We're gonna now learn the behind the scenes for them and why they became, you know, John Kramer's student, so to speak, because he's a teacher, right? That's kind of the his legacy towards these advocates, right? He's
Yeah.
basically their teacher that they didn't have anybody, and he took them under their wing, so to speak. So we're going to learn from their perceptions, not just John Kramer's. So I can understand why they're wanting to keep pushing it. So it'll be interesting to see um, how they do this.
And I will say that that is something I definitely agreed with. You mentioned Saw 10 and so much of the team that came back. The director was, I believe he edited, I think the first four and then number six, which is out of the sequels. I was initially one of those people who I think Saw 5 was when I tapped out. And when I came back a
Yeah.
few years later, I was frustrated because Saw 6 was actually good. And then Saw 3D brought me back down to earth. But I was like, oh man, I missed out. I gave up right before things got good again. But no, I do think that was somebody, and I think that's why we saw what you and I have talked about, that return to form this was someone who understands Saw more than anyone. I will tell
Right.
you that editors who work on things probably know the ins and outs of those stories better than anyone who works on
Right.
them because they're the ones deciding which takes are being used. So they're getting this information drilled into their mind time and time again through all the different
Right.
takes. So it doesn't always work out, but in this case, I think it was a great choice. And yeah, you mentioned, okay, so that's interesting with the fact that we're going to continue to go back in time. I think that's a smart choice, and I only wish they'd have done it sooner because Tobin Bell, uh, very very old at this point, unfortunately, and so
Well, yeah.
uh, that was something that I just wish they had done because he was always like once two got involved, or really maybe at the end of the first Saw, it was sort of like Freddy, Jason, Mike Myers status, like Tobin Bell
Yeah.
is
Yeah. I did.
Saw.
Yeah, I did realize that after like the third installment, like, is this where we're going?
Yeah, where it's like, okay, this is our all-knowing. He's like a super genius. He knows exactly decision every. He's like a Jedi. He knows every decision everyone's gonna make. He sets them up perfectly every time.
Right. Right. The
But
psychology. It's the psychology of it. That's what has me like so driven because for a lot of people, like there are some people in this world that like need to know how people work as far as like patterns. So it's like psychoanalyzing type of deal. And the majority of people are like that. And people that are online are against people like myself that, analyze everything to the T. You know what I mean? So kind of that's why I'm considered controversial.
Oh, I mean, I imagine, especially if you're on Twitter, you don't get a
Oh
lot of
yeah, they
you get a
get
lot of
real mad. They get real mad at me. It's too funny.
you get a lot of well thought out responses. But and then to when you think of maybe my least favorite. Currently, I have it as my second from the bottom, but
Okay.
Jigsaw, right? That was one that does not have. Is that because that is what gives us another acolyte of Tobin Bell, but it was sort of and Spiral as well. When I'm trying to think of the instances where they tried to maybe divert, like, hey, we're going to go away from the actor Tobin Bell and try to have like Spiral specifically really tried to.
But Spiral was like a copycat of Saw.
Yeah,
Yeah. We tried it, but
and that one I appreciate the effort, and I love that that movie got made just because a rich funny guy loves the franchise so much. But
yeah, pretty much. But I think the I don't know the concept of father and son, they didn't get along. It was dysfunctional the entire time, and they didn't get along to begin with. So at least, even though it was not such a happy ending, at least they figured out their shit prior. You know what I'm saying? Kind of like that same synopsis of appreciate your life, especially the people that are in your life. You know what I mean? So
yeah, I guess that does work.
yeah,
I
even though it was not a happy ending.
yeah, right. And there were just things, one of my critiques that the audience has heard a lot is sometimes I get frustrated when comedy is injected into a story that may or may not need it. Every once in a while, it's good to, let everybody, it's like getting to a save point in a Silent Hill game,
Right,
right? Like, yeah,
right,
give me a
right,
second to breathe. Okay, I'm
right.
fine with it. But I felt like Chris Rock maybe tried too hard to make sure that his brand was felt in the movie. There's a whole thing early on where he's having some conversation, and you can tell that he's trying to do a Reservoir Dogs Tarantino thing where I can't even remember exactly. He was talking about like how women cheat during the daytime or something. And it's just kind of like, it felt very forced. I know he told the writers specifically, don't write any comedy in, just write it as a standard detective procedural, and I'll include the comedy.
Yeah,
And it's not like none of it was good, but there were moments where it was just it felt kind of forced. And I really expected, and maybe this is something I'll go back and appreciate more. But I think coming in, I was like, okay, Chris Rock and Sam Jackson, father and son, like they're gonna act the hell out of this movie, right? Like it's gonna be those moments will definitely
right,
be good. So
right,
I need to go back and see if that held up. But yeah, generally speaking, I think they're best sticking with Tobin's crew or Kramer's crew, like you
right,
mentioned, Hoffman,
right,
Amanda,
right, right,
Dr. Grant, those
right,
those folks.
right.
Which do you have a favorite
As far as an advocate,
as far as the advocates, the acolytes? Is there? Do you
um,
have thoughts specifically on some of the secondary villains?
I mean, I'm 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 gonna relate more to Amanda's story because this December is gonna be November. Um, the end of November is my ninth year of sobriety, and then December is my 10th year of being clean.
Well,
So
congratulations.
thank you. I'm gonna relate more to Amanda's story as far as needing to escape from her angle. Um, so I can relate to her from that sense, but for me, Amanda was probably the one of the weakest advocates out of all of them because she can't deal with life. Like if you remember from, you know, obviously I can't go into graphic details, but in the second and third movie, we find out that she was a self harmer. So if you can't deal with life, how are you supposed to be an advocate for John Kramer? And you can appreciate your life, and that is his whole premise. So to me, I felt like she was one of the weaker ones. Um, I guess you could say my favorite would be Dr. Gordon because his was just, you know, to the T. I gotta do what I gotta do. I'm gonna help him out. He helped me out. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Even though, I mean, technically he did survive the trap. You know, the whole bathroom, that was the trap. But people don't, for whatever reason, people don't see that as a trap. But that was a test. Same thing.
Yeah.
The same thing. So he did survive it. But as far as Detective Hoffman, this is what I find interesting between Kramer and Hoffman is that people say that Kramer isn't a killer and Hoffman is. Like his motivation is, I don't care, I'm gonna hurt you because, um, and again, I don't know how detailed we want to be as far as like the people that haven't seen the movie, but there is a reason behind.
Spoilers.
Yeah,
Full
there is a
spoilers. Go
okay.
ahead.
Okay, well, the reasoning behind Hoffman being so vengeful and so hateful is because he lost his son. And any parent who loses their child, you are never the same after that. You are broken. You are never the same. And obviously, I'm never gonna have that experience, but I can empathize with parents. I can empathize with people. You know what I mean? There's only so much you can do, but I can understand from his standpoint as to why he just became vengeful. He's like, fuck it, I'm mad at the world. I'm gonna kill everything. Fuck it, right? But I'm not a vengeful person, so I'm different from I'd say the majority of society where there's an eye for an eye or two wrongs make a right, whatever, right? I just
Yeah.
don't fully believe in that. I let the universe take its course, or I let karma take its course, whatever the fuck you believe in, right? But I don't believe in revenge myself, so that's why I can't really fully coincide with Hoffman. But what about you?
Yeah, Hoffman is an interesting one because yeah, I mean he's the Hoffmanator. You know, he's
Hoffman,
indestructible.
right?
And even the move, like you mentioned, people have the arguments online or out in the world about Kramer being a murderer, Hoffman not being a murderer. But the movie does it too. There's even the one of the most memeable scenes for me personally is when John Kramer is screaming at Hoffman that killing is distasteful, and I'm just like,
Right. And
get
it's
off
like,
your
wait a
high
minute,
horse, dude.
what?
But there is, and even in the investigations, they pointed out where they'll say, these traps were rigged so that they could not escape. Right. I think that's the case that ultimately gets Hoffman caught when by the FBI before he really becomes the Hoffmanator,
Right.
is because he does that copycat to the person that harmed someone in his family, and he was never going to let them escape,
Right.
which is
Right.
how Jigsaw gets onto him in the first place. So I, it's funny. Hoffman probably isn't high on my list either. He had quite a run in those three movies where he's kind of the lead dog are the three that I watched the
Right.
least, I would say probably. But if I equate it kind of, there's a run in the Halloween movies like 4, 5, and 6 that's about similar, where it's real campy, and
Right.
because I'm already invested in the series, I'm just gonna forgive it. It's trespasses and just enjoy it for what it is.
That's
I do agree. Dr. Grant makes so many of the traps possible. So he feels
right.
like a very vital addition when they revealed
Right.
that and say, okay, well, this all makes a lot more sense now if he's involved. And Amanda, I agree. I think for the actress's sake, the role she played in Saw 1 and part of 2, I thought she was phenomenal as that, like as the recovering frightened addict who, like you said, just can't quite deal with all of this. So for me, when there were moments of her needing to be the John Kramer, the Jigsaw badass, like it didn't really work for me as well. I couldn't get there. Like I
Right.
couldn't really, even with her performance, I would just be like, yeah, I mean, you're the tough guy, huh? But so I had a real mixed bag with her. There were certain moments where I'm like, wow, she is killing it right now in this scene. And then there would be other scenes, depending on what they needed her to do, where just be like, this just doesn't make sense that
She
this
couldn't hang.
character would be
Yeah.
doing
Just
this.
couldn't hang.
Um,
Weird.
I think they even retconned it. I think didn't they end up, or maybe it was the plan, but I think it's what 3 or 4 where or it's probably 4 Anyway, where they point out that Hoffman was the reason she was acting so radically in the room with the doctor, where it's like, because I remember that being a moment when I first was like, none of this makes sense. And
I
why is
think it
Amanda
was,
being like this?
but I think it was three because he tested her as well. But she was gone after three.
Okay.
He did set her up. He did test her, and she failed.
Yep. And
Failed
then, well,
miserably.
but she failed, I think, because of Hoffman, I think, was the one of the, because they do one of the, and
Yeah.
that's one of my favorite things about, like, I don't know. I think it's, to some degree, it's like technically wrong. Like they would tell you not to do this if you're in a creative writing course or whatever, trying to learn the craft.
Yeah.
They would
Yeah.
say, don't rely on a bunch of flashbacks where you just widen out. And it's like, oh, this person was also here the whole time, but it's become part of it. Again, you just put your cheese cap on and you accept it that that's what's coming. Um,
Kind of like a period piece if you think about the entire franchise, because
it
everything goes back in the story and the story and the story. Yeah.
It does, and someone described it in a way that I had not seen described. I'm sure not the first one to mention this, but someone described it as like a horror soap opera, and I was like, "Yes, dude. Okay, that makes a lot of
Yeah.
sense to me.
It
Okay, yeah,
can be.
okay."
Yeah. 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 It can be.
Where they're just like the plot thickens, and oh wait, here's a twist, and this person you thought was good was bad all along, and I mean, that's part of it. I think at that
Yeah.
point, if you're going to any Saw movie, you should probably expect some of that. Otherwise, you will be disappointed
Pretty
because you're
much.
gonna get it. You're gonna get it. But so I know we talked about this a little bit in the pre-show, and I know that we probably won't get into the specifics, but as far as the traps, I know you ranked all of the traps, and you told me ahead of time, and I'm sure you told the folks in the video what you use, like how you based your decision on those traps. So when you're looking at that, just like even for movies going forward, like what are some of the factors that make a good Saw trap for you? Do you prefer the group traps over the individual ones? Do you like to see throwback stuff? What are you looking for in a trap scene?
So for me, I know, like, I've been watching this since I was a teenager, so I know there is no potential for survivability. But as a Saw fan, you start thinking, can I do this? You got a minute flat. Can I do this? Is there something that I can rip something out of my skin? Is there something that I can, deal with later on? As far as like having to, be in the hospital maybe like for like 6 months to a year, depending on
Yeah.
how severe the trap is. Um, I do talk a little bit about, but obviously I tried not to go into detail, but I kind of couldn't help it as far as the way I do videos on my channel because everybody just preferred to, you know, do copyright, right? They just preferred to get the copyright claim, right? For me, I had to be more descriptive because I wasn't gonna fuck with all that, and being deafblind and everything, so I just did it my way. I think that's why people preferred the way I did it. I don't know, but as far as like creativity and the sense that did they really take the time to think about, okay, if you are in this trap, are you automatically panicking or are you thriving? Because let's be fair, fear does one of two things. You either sit there and panic and you're done, you're defeated, or you're more than likely going to be like, I got to get out of this. How do I get out of this? You're in fight mode, right? So that's the level of creativity that I'm looking for. Also, another thing that I'm looking for is intensity. So, is this raising my blood pressure? Is this something that I'm nail biting? Um, I'll give you an example. So, for Saw 10, the brain trap, the brain surgery trap, that
Mm-hmm.
was a level of nail biting because for me, going back to Saw 1, very first Saw, I had vision, meaning I wasn't blind yet. I still had an acuity. I was still able to wear glasses. So to go from that to Saw 10, listening to it, to audio description, looking at the screen, saying the best I fucking could. That big ass fucking theater screen. Um, it was bittersweet for me to listen, but I'm still nail biting. I'm still like moving around in my fucking chair, like oh. So that it was perfect. You know what I mean? Either way, it was like a fit. But as far as like survivability, um, a lot of the times for a lot of people, they look for, is it going to be something that's quick, like you know what I mean, just rip off the band-aid type of deal. But for me, I had to like integrate everything that I deal with, as far as my ailments, as far as my my mental state at that point, because
Mm.
there's just a lot of things that factor into it. So looking at other people's rankings and they're like what they're looking for in traps, and then looking at the writers and like the filmmakers of what they want your perception to be of the traps, I was just like looking at it from all angles. You know what I mean? So what
Yeah,
about you?
that makes sense. And I've never tried to rank them, so that would be an interesting thought exercise for me. But generally speaking, the ones that get me the best when they're in the film, either when I recognize it in that moment or when someone shows it to me in their review, and I'm like, oh wait, no, really? It's usually the group ones. Obviously, Jigsaw's thing is that there's supposed to be a way out every time, but I really enjoy a little bit more so than the individual challenges, because the individual challenge is usually, like you said, it's about your own fortitude. Can you cut this key out of yourself? Or there have been some where, that when they show Amanda in the first one, where she has to cut into somebody else, we don't really know the full story. Was there a way they could have cooperated out? That one didn't feel like it was set up for cooperation, but there are
Right,
plenty later on that do, where it's like, oh, there's only 3 chambers and there's 4 of you. Who's going to survive? But lo and behold, there's plenty of room. Like 2 people could have fit in one of them. They never stopped to think about it, because, like you said, they
right,
were
right,
they were
right.
panicked. However many
Exactly,
traps they've already gone
exactly,
through.
exactly.
So I love the ones where they have the big reveal of like, oh, we all could have just gone through if we had just taken a minute and not gone at each other's throat and not just assumed that one person had to die every time. We all could
Yeah.
have gotten through this. So those are the ones that I enjoy.
So that's what I don't like about the group traps, is because there is a way out for everybody, but it's
Okay.
typically survival of the fittest, and it's every man for himself. So a lot of people are selfish. You see what I'm saying? They'd
Yeah. So
rather
it's
sacrifice somebody else to save themselves, and no one wins that way. So it's a setup to begin with, because like human nature, people go against each other. Nobody is a tribe anymore. Nobody sticks together anymore. So that's why Kramer was able to do all of that, because it's just a pattern that people do. It's just a common knowledge, unfortunately. You know what I mean?
yeah, that's to me, that's why those just stick deep when you get them, is like, oh man, everybody,
Right.
even though they know, even as it goes further along, and you're like, well, these people know that they're in jigsaw traps, and yet they still, uh, you know, it's like you
Yeah.
said, survival of the fittest, instead of how can we maybe work together. If there's a lesson here for all of us, maybe there's a way we can learn our lesson and get out. But we're all, and I would say to some extent, rightfully so. I guess I've never been in a death trap room. I go into most of those traps knowing that, oh, I would fail, I would die, I would
Have you ever
panic.
done an escape room? The same thing.
I I have not. I think those could be fun, although it really depends on. There's not a lot of people on the planet Earth I'd prefer to be locked in a room with. Um, so I don't
Yeah,
know. Even
those.
the ones I like, I'm kind of like, oh,
Yeah,
how many hours?
yeah. The time limit is like, for me, what the ones that I've done with my friends, the time limits. Some of them, there is no time limit. It's just to see how long it takes you to do it, and then the other ones are like 40 minutes. You got 40
Oh,
minutes
okay.
because there's a puzzle within a puzzle within a puzzle within a puzzle. So if you can do that and you can work with people, then you're more than likely able to figure out a saw trap.
Well,
That's how people see it. But that's
yeah.
I'm just going by what other people are saying. I'm like, I don't know about that, bro.
I think I'd be a bit of a nervous Nelly when it came time. If all of a sudden I was in an escape room and they said, no, hey, in 40 minutes though, we're filling this thing with gas, and you're not, at that point I'd be like, oh God, oh, I thought I could do these just because I played Resident Evil games, man. Oh, what is
I've even done like those virtual mazes where it's like they literally, it's instead of it being like the cornfields, it's literally just walls, but it's like interchangeable colors. I've done that before, where I've done that with my friends, and they've all panicked because claustrophobia. But I was able to figure it out. So
yeah, see, I'm the panic dude. I'm gonna tell you now, JoJo, let me die. If I'm ever stuck in that room with you, just let me die. I'm probably gonna.
I would literally if I have to drag, as little as I am, if I have to drag your ass, I will.
I will be.
Like, you're not quitting on me. Let's go.
I'll be the Bill Pat. Just it's over, man. It's all over.
So you would be the Amanda of the group.
Oh yeah, I'd be freaking out. I'd just be in a puddle of my own tears and sweat. It's like whatever. Or I'd be like,
I'm different because I thrive under pressure. So that's where I'm different.
See, not maybe I would surprise myself, but I'd probably the one thing I know I wouldn't do that I can never understand is when you have the people who hesitate when they have the challenge. Like the one guy has to break all of his fingers before his eyes get sucked out. Now, granted, that one's a dream sequence, but still, you have those people where it's like,
watch. Like, come on now.
Yeah, that was brutal. But to me, it's like I never understand the people who like, if you're gonna go through pain, wouldn't you want to just do it all at once? Like, obviously, for the sake of building tension as a storyteller, like I understand why the script needs it to happen that way.
Right,
but those are the people that irk me, where I'm like, dude, just get it over with. You're one at a time. Really, you're gonna do the most painful way. Oh man,
I don't know. And I guess it just depends on how people deal with things. You know what I mean?
I'm afraid that'd be what my dumb ass would do. Like, well, let me just see. Let's just try breaking my pinky and see if I can deal with 4 more after that.
You got like 6 seconds left. Come on, bro.
Yeah, we can test this out. Hang on. Yikes.
I'm stupid.
So while we're talking about the traps and everything, this is one, that I was thinking about that I'm sure you are going to be well equipped for this because you went through them all to put your list together. So earlier I asked about what we would do if someone wanted to go back and get caught up on everything, but this is a little different. What if you have a casual Saw fan who is maybe somebody who's not out of Halloween mode yet? Some of us stay here all winter, and is like, you know what? I miss some good Saw traps, but I don't want to sit through 20 hours of movie. What would be a movie or two that you would say, hey, this has the best collection of traps? If you really just want some good trap action, watch these 2 movies and you'll be good. You can get it out of your system. Do you have some thoughts on which movies cluster them the best?
Are we going by popular demand as far as traps, or are we going?
No, I would say based on your the scale that you graded it on.
Okay.
Or however you would like to do it, but that was my thought.
So top 2.
Yeah. I don't want to make you list all your 10 favorite traps. So however many you want to give, a movie or 2.
I would have to say, if you just want a quick Saw fix, as you're saying, so to speak, definitely Saw 2. Saw 2 has a lot of integrated things. You've got things that you wouldn't even think of, like, spoiler, being burned alive. That's something I can't do. I'm sorry. That's like the worst way to die, to be burned alive. I'm just saying, like, I can't. But there are a lot of intricate things as far as that whole house is a trap. You know what I mean? It's like a gas chamber. So that would be like for me, if I just want a quick fix as far as I always go to number 2 because it's just a lot of intricate things. A lot of like a little bit more gruesome, a little bit more like nail biting, cringy for a lot of people. Like for example, a lot of people are afraid of needles, so that
Oh,
needle trap will get you every time. I'm not afraid of needles, but the majority of people are.
yep,
So
I am one of them.
if you want a quick fix, number 2 would be your best bet as far as Saw goes. I would say Saw 5 is a good one too because it's the group trap
Yep.
and it's a lot of. I would say that's a little more gruesome. But if you're looking for as far as intensity with the gruesome, I hate to say it, but Jigsaw goes there. Jigsaw really
Okay.
goes
Yeah.
there when it comes to the trap between the lasers, the motorcycle, the sand being suffocated like that.
That's right.
There's just so many intricate things that I can think of off the top of my head. So I would say those 2.
Okay.
Even
Okay.
though I mean, I'll admit Jigsaw was a disappointment because I was excited after Saw 3D. Um, I would say that one too, especially if you're a Chester Bennington fan.
Yeah.
That's the main reason why a lot of people watched it. I was a huge, prior to this whole debacle, but I was a huge Linkin Park fan, and I was like, even though I knew he wasn't gonna make it, part of me was like, after the movie was done, because I actually went to go see it in 3D. I was able to, watch it prior to like losing more vision. Even though people complained about Saw 3D. But for me, I was just like crying at the end, and everybody was, all of my friends were like, "What's wrong?" I was like, "He didn't make it." I wanted him to make it, even though he was racist in the movie. He didn't make it. I was just like real sad.
He never got the chance to learn his lesson. That was an
Exactly.
interesting one.
He got ripped out of his lesson.
You judge others by the color of their skin, therefore we will rip yours off.
No,
So, I mean, I guess
he literally got ripped out of his skin, literally. So yeah.
Maybe it does work.
Oh no.
So yeah, that I like that. I agree. I mean, Saw 2 is right up there currently. I mean, it's locked in my top 4, just
Right.
as far as my
Right.
Saw movies in general. And I will say, I am one of those people who, even though now I'm not the same kid I was when I used to cringe at every movie that had any gore in it. Now I'm looking at it and be like, oh, dude, how did they accomplish this? That's pretty cool. The needle pit is still one I just can't do because I'm the kind of guy that is looking the complete other direction when he's getting that shot put in his arm. I don't know. There's something just weird about it for me that it's not the end of the world. It hurts a little bit. I don't want to see it. I can know it's happening and stay still, but just the sight of that, just doesn't do great things for me. But I like that one. I have, maybe just a general. If you're looking to catch one of the mid. When I say mid, I mean like the middle of the sequence. Saw 6 is a movie that I like. And I don't know specifically. I'd have to go back. I know there's the shotgun trap. That's pretty interesting. And the way things go out at the end. I can't remember if it has the best traps in there or not, but Saw 6 was one of the movies that I enjoyed.
Saw 6 was one of the traps that I have in there is that the basically the blindfold where he's up on top of those planks, and people were like, "Well, you're blind, so you'd be able to fly through it." And I'm like, "Yeah, but you have a motherfucker that's screaming at you, telling you you're worthless and you're a piece of shit. I can't really concentrate if someone's yelling at me like that."
No,
you know what I'm
fair.
saying?
Yeah. Well, and it's just and that's one where it's like you would be, but whoever else.
I mean, I can't go further into that, but that's the hangman trap. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You can only run so far, and if someone's bitching at you the entire time, it's like, motherfucker, you tried it. What the fuck?
I can't see, dude.
I can't see anyways, but what the fuck?
Right.
I'm already deafblind. I know I can fly through this, but just shut up.
Right. Oh man.
There's no way I'd be able to do it with him, bitching in my ear like a woman. Like, I ain't got time for that.
So I know folks will see your least favorite movie when they start. That'll be pretty much right where the video starts. But do you
Right.
have a character that just drives you nuts? I'll give you mine, and maybe that will help because this is one that I just thought of. I didn't prep you for this one. I didn't have it on the list at all, but I think his name is Bobby, the dude who writes the book about his fake experience with Saw. That character is just the worst, and I thought it was an interesting choice to have a guy going through the Saw trap that was just so unlikable, right? Like I just felt like a guy didn't have any redeeming qualities, and it was one of the few times where you're kind of like, I don't really care if he gets through these traps or not. We're there.
Well, the entitlement, because like everybody that was around him knew he was a fraud. That was the interesting part. Everybody knew he was a fraud. So the fact that he got his karma, so to speak, when it came to Jigsaw, you know what I'm saying? He really got his karma in that movie if you think about it.
Yeah,
there was no way he could do those traps. There was absolutely no way.
I would say before Saw 10, that was maybe one of the first moments where I was like, "Yeah, dude, get him, Jigsaw. This dude deserves it."
Exactly.
These other people have things that like aren't, like a lot early on. It was like, dude, we get it. You don't like drug addicts. Relax, man. That's not very cool to like trap people because they.
That's like saying you don't like me. You know what I'm saying? Like
it's just like, what are you gonna do?
We all recover. Some of us do recover. Like what the fuck?
Yeah, what are you going after
like,
people?
Relax.
It's like, oh, you went after smokers and stuff. It's like, what are you gonna do next? You're gonna go after people who eat at McDonald's twice a week? Like, you're not appreciating.
Can you imagine them being stuck in a saw trap inside of the McDonald's? Like, I just don't think you imagine.
They have to cook their way out.
Brothers, don't take our ideas.
It was just your big, a big vat. You're like in this giant fry cook basket. You have 30 seconds to avoid the bubbling oil that you
have to consume this oil.
Saturate your veins with on a daily basis. Like, Jesus, dude, relax, man. So at least this one was one where it's like, yeah, fuck Bobby, asshole.
Fucking Bobby.
Yeah.
I would say, as far as like characters, that's a tough one, to be honest.
Yeah, that's
like someone that annoyed the fuck out of me.
Maybe Jeff from 3.
What was the dude's name in the second one? Oh, not Obi, the other dude.
Is it the dude that cuts his tattoo off his neck?
Yeah.
Like the super aggro dude? I don't remember.
Oh my god.
Okay. That's a good.
The fact that he pushed Amanda into those fucking, like, that was a fucking dick move. He could have, that was his trap. Xavier? Is that what it was?
I don't remember his name.
I think it was Xavier. I think that was what it was. If I'm not mistaken.
I agree with you.
I could be wrong. But the fact that he shoved her in there, it's like, you motherfucker would have lost it on him.
Yeah, I agree.
Like,
he's another one.
That was a dick move. Like, he was just like so annoying because he wanted to control everything, but then he wanted to be a bitch and not go through the traps. And you know what I'm saying?
It's like, then all of a sudden he's tough. He can. So he can't handle a couple of needles poking him, but he can cut off the back of his neck. Like what?
Yeah, that made no sense. That made no sense to me at all. So,
come on, guys. The script needed it. Sometimes
that was his trap. That was his. That's why it didn't work, because he didn't do it.
Yeah, that bum.
You can survive prison, but you can't survive a little fucking needle. Get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, come on, man. Oh, well, that runs through all of the questions that I had, but we've still got a little time here left. Are there any topics that you had for me, or anything just Saw related you want to chop it up about?
Did you, I don't think I asked you, did you go view Saw 3D in 3D, or did you see the regular movie version?
That is a good question. I did not watch it in 3D if memory serves. And it's interesting. That's a good thing for me to talk about because I am one of the people who just generally speaking doesn't go to 3D movies.
Right.
If if you enjoy that added aspect of it, I am not here to take that away from anyone. For me, um, I feel like whenever a movie is done purposefully in 3D, then you have no choice but to work certain scenes around that. Because if you don't have things shoot out at the audience, then they're not getting what they paid
But see,
for.
that's the thing is that people were bitching about that I saw in reviews for Saw is that they're like, well, yeah, the blood jumped out at you, but it was pink, it wasn't red. It's like, bro, calm the fuck down, just enjoy the movie. What the fuck? But
And
I enjoyed it, and my friends were crying at the end, but it was fun.
that,
But I
so
think,
yeah.
but I did do this comparison in my reviews that I would rather have done a 3D version of Saw than a virtual reality. So
Hmm.
have you seen those where people will go to like the VR versions of like Hostile, Insidious? You're literally a character in the movie while you're watching the movie as it's presented. You know nothing about the storyline, but you're essentially part of the characters, even though you're outside of it. It's a cool thing to think about as far as concepts, but if you're not in the right frame of mind, you don't come back the same. You're gonna have some level of PTSD because I heard I was listening to this was like back in I want to say like 2014 when this started coming out as far as like VR for horror films. One of the women and I had to like I literally like contacted her because I was like, dude, what the hell were you thinking? But she went into Insidious and she went into the details that she got her head cut off. Like she didn't make it, obviously, but she was like, I didn't realize going in. She's like, I don't know what the fuck I thought. I didn't realize going in that I would be like that so involved as a character, and to this day
Hmm.
she still has PTSD from that. She's like, I don't know how people in horror films do this. Like, I don't like. She's like, I now have a different level of respect for actors that go through that because you're purposefully triggering yourself. Like you're purposely hurting your mental health that way. And I think actors have a way of separating themselves from that, right? This is what they do for a living. So they have to be like that's the whole point of an actor. You're playing a character, so you have to step outside of yourself on purpose. So I don't think it's as intricate as she's making it seem, but because of the level of her PTSD. So I would rather do a 3D version than having to actually go immerse into the movie. Like that would scare the fuck out of me. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, I agree with you in that that sounds like a fun concept, but it won't be for me.
No, no.
To do a sit through virtual reality horror movie like that.
Right,
Yeah, and as far as the my whole thing with 3D is I personally, if a movie is done well or if I'm just invested enough in it, for me the dark lights and the loud music is enough for me to be immersed. And
right, right,
with a 3D, if it's ever a shoehorned in scene, if the 3D doesn't go perfectly, it's just an opportunity to break my immersion from the film and be reminded that I'm sitting in a theater. And so for me, sometimes, like when it's good, it's really good, but when it's bad, it kind of defeats the purpose for me. When it's sort of like sometimes you have those movies that clearly, and that's why I will at least give Saw 3D the credit that it was always made with the intention of being
right,
3D. What
right,
I really
right.
don't like is when you see like when they make Deadpool 3D, like what do you, that's not
Oh
a 3D
yeah,
movie. You're just putting out a 3D version of why people are paying
right,
$8 more to go see this be shoehorned in.
right.
Why? Why would you do that?
Yeah,
If the movie's good, you'll be immersed. I promise. That's how it works. That's why they make
exactly.
the room so dark. But yeah, so I am one of the people who it's like I'm not a I wouldn't say I'm a 3D hater because again all of this stuff creates more opportunities in a field that I love, whether it
Right,
be horror or film in general. So yeah, make all the 3D movies you want. Less more jobs. I just will
exactly.
probably watch the 2D version, and that's fine too. But yeah, I virtual reality is probably one I will stay away from. Luckily, I don't have a big enough house anyway to be running around in my own house playing video games or watching movies. So I'll stick to we got enough screens. I might as well have my phone embedded into my hand at this point in life. I don't need
Right,
to be that
right.
strapped in. I'm not going Ready Player One mode anytime soon.
And then another question I had. So you said you dropped off at 5, right? So Saw 5 was like you're like I'm out, I'm tapped out. What made you go back into Saw? What made you immerse back into the franchise?
Oh, that's a good question. I think so. There was a time early on in life, I just watched movies like anyone else would, to pass the time.
Right.
I did. So I started writing fiction probably at like 7, 8 years old and have just
Wow.
always been really
Okay.
infatuated with storytelling. And it wasn't until college that I had decided that I really wanted to pursue that, even if I to this day, I have a job. I work a 9 to 5.
Right.
I never really did that whole like, oh, I'm going to go all in and be a starving artist. But I've continued to work on the craft ever since college, and that was when I changed just how I viewed movies and TV shows and why. So there were so many things. I went back to everything that I liked and rewatched it, but I also would go back to some other things and Saw, as I mentioned before, just because of it being a low budget movie and all of
Right.
the stuff that went into getting it made, that was a franchise I wanted to come back to. And by the time I came back, I think at that point they were probably all on Netflix or something. They were all on some kind of streaming service, so I could get caught up. I think I have the first
I
three
think
on DVD.
from what I remember, they're on Peacock
Oh, they probably are now.
or
This was
for
oh,
Halloween and all that stuff. So yeah.
that makes sense now. Yeah.
Right.
And
Right.
so yeah, then I got back in and just started to rewatch them, and I bought into the hype a little bit when it came to Spiral. I was very intrigued. So not one that I went and watched in theaters, but probably I was probably I don't. I want to know. I wonder where they were in their timeline exactly when I came back. But it was more just sort of. I love horror movies, and I have a soft spot for every other franchise, and even the ones that
Yeah.
sort of like Jason towards the end. I'm like, yeah, I don't. These aren't good anymore at all. But I'm a completionist at heart, so I
Yeah.
wanted to
Same
go
here.
back
Same
and
here.
know and
Definitely a completionist. So I get that.
yeah. So I'm still sitting through those horrible Halloween movies that they keep farting out. So I'll probably keep watching every Saw movie as well.
Yeah.
But you stayed true throughout, right? There's been no break. You've so have you? Do you get like? Is it? I know obviously things have changed over time with accessibility and stuff. But is
Right.
this all things being equal? Would Saw still be a? I want to go see this in theaters. Is that will that be? Does it
Well,
have that
yeah,
place in your
because
heart as a franchise where you're like,
right
I
because it's now even more so immersive because like if you can imagine having to listen to it, like audio description is a little more intricate and more in depth than an audiobook because you're describing what's happening in the scenes and then you're listening to the characters talk. You see what I'm saying? So it's a little more because people think that if I say audio description, people think, oh, it's like an audiobook. No, not quite.
mm-mm.
It's a little more intricate. It's a little more immersive. And over time, like audio description has gotten better and better. Um, and I went to school for the deaf and school for the blind here in Illinois, and that was like my first immersion of audio description. But obviously, the films, TV, and movie have to catch up.
Yeah.
So we like when I was a kid, like the kids nowadays have it fucking good. They have it made. We had to struggle, so we had to figure it out. You know what I mean? Like even like now more so like with gaming, it's now accessible. But I did. I just even though it was hard for like certain movies I couldn't get through, like Saw 3. was hard for me. Again, I don't believe in vengeance, and I can't really relate to the losing a kid storyline. But I got through it, and then I would say after Jigsaw, it took me a while to watch Spiral. Um, Even though I knew that I had to watch it in order to get to Jigsaw. I just wanted to make sure, even though it was a copycat, even though Chris Rock made it, even though, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
For me, it was more so like, like maybe there's something in there that I'm gonna miss as far as pieces, but obviously I needed to know the traps and all that stuff. So
Right.
I felt like it was like Spiral and Jigsaw, unfortunately, were like a little lazy for me. Even
I would
though
agree.
even though Jigsaw's traps were a lot more immersive, as far as like if you need like a quick fix, those are a lot. They're very graphic. Um, so as far as Spiral, I just felt like I think the only trap that's good was the train. Unfortunately, do you remember that one?
That's true. Now that you mention it,
That's the only one that was a good
there's
one.
not many memorable traps from that one.
Other than that, a lot of them were like the shit is lazy. Like
I think I
like
remember more
as,
Chris Rock one-liners.
as a blind person, I could have came up with that shit. Like, come on. But I'm not, I'm more creative than that. So I wouldn't come up with that. But I think that was the only trap that was just like, whoa. Because like when you look at the preview for Spiral, that's what they start off with. They start off with that trap, the train one in the subway.
Yeah, they knew. Normally,
Like,
you don't want to give away your best thing in the trailer, but they probably
that's
knew they
the
didn't have
only
much
good
else.
one that there was. I'm like, well, maybe they did that for a reason. It's like, Jesus, that sucks. That was a disappointment. Like, that's it. That's all I get. It doesn't get better. Because the whole point of Saw is it gets better from here. Or you leave the movie saying, well, fuck, what more could they do? Like, how much better can it get? You know what I'm saying? You end up
Yeah,
you end with the movie like that.
at the very least, I would think when you go into any Saw movie, you expect I'm going to see some new and creative traps that I haven't
Right.
seen before. The story might drive me nuts. That's to each personal preference. You may have gotten sick of some of the storyline parts but you can go in there expecting I'm going to see some traps that blow my mind, and
Right.
like you said, push the envelope in some kind of way that justifies doing it for the
Right.
8th time or the 9th time or whatever. So okay, well, we have new trap ideas at least, right?
Right. Right.
It's like going to a Sylvester Stallone movie. You expect to see him in a cutoff T-shirt, and something's going to explode, right? And if that doesn't happen, you're thinking, "What the hell? What are we doing here?"
Exactly.
So I think, yeah. Go ahead.
I think one last question that I have for you is for the foreseeable future for Saw, or if you want to, go on the Wayback Machine with Saw, would you say that as far as like writing, as far as like everything that they've done, do you feel like they could have changed a few things in each movie, or do you feel like it eventually pans out, even though some of the stuff, because like you said earlier, some of the stuff you could have done without some of the stuff, but do you feel like as a whole, does it make sense?
That's a good question. I have the worst kind of answer because I'm gonna go with like a little column A, a little column B, because I'll start first by saying that I do think with Saw 10, it did kind of level things out and
Right.
get you back to a good place.
Right.
But with that being said, and this is something I mentioned to you in the pre-show as well, and I think it's something other franchises have done with some success. So I think if it weren't maybe too late in the game, this is something they could have done at any point in time. I think it was a huge mistake to kill John Kramer. I don't know at the time when it happened if the filmmakers realized that they had created the next Mike Myers, Freddy,
Right.
Jason,
Right.
that they had an iconic villain here on their hands, and they had spent so many movies after that trying to reincorporate a dead man that I'm still waiting for the identical twin reveal. At this point, I'm just gonna say he has a brother, doesn't he? Somehow, just get this man back in here. He's what's working. So in other franchises, so Halloween at one point they'll say, hey,
Yeah.
this movie is a direct sequel. Everything Halloween 2 on didn't happen, and I think they should have left Halloween 2 alone. But that's another conversation for another day. But plenty of franchises have said, you know what? We're gonna soft reboot this. We're gonna just start at this point in the timeline and say this is what happened. And I wouldn't have hated it if at some point along the line Saw had decided to do that. They're one of the few franchises at this point that somehow has stayed grounded in their initial reality. Like there's one timeline, as crazy as they want to go with it, it still all stays in that one freaking timeline. And they're kind of one of the last few standing on that ground. So which is why I have the mixed feelings on it. On one hand, I'd like to see them go back and maybe make that pivot, but then they would be like everybody else, which was until Hostel and a bunch of copycats came along. That was kind of Saw's whole thing, was that they weren't like anybody else.
Exactly. Yeah, that's how I see it. That's
maybe
exactly
leave it, I guess.
Right. And then before I go, okay, so this is a controversy in the Saw community and between Saw fans. Okay. Would you have kept watching if they would have cut out the cop plot lines and detective, like the whole detective cop scenery? If would you have kept watching it? Because the biggest thing that Saw fans hate that I've noticed is that there's too many of these storylines within the Saw franchise. And if you cut that out, like, let's be fair, Saw 10 doesn't have that.
Yeah, they talk about that specifically.
Saw 10 doesn't have that. They wiped that shit out.
The director specifically said the cops were weighing us down.
And that's why a lot of people were like, would you have continued watching this? And I mean, it makes the story. Like, it is what it is. We can't go backwards. And the writers can't, fucking write it back. You know what I mean? So
yeah. It's a great debate. And
it is a huge still a debate today.
Yeah.
But especially with the new movies coming in.
Right. Like, are they going to just continue to do away with that? So
yeah. Good cop, bad cop scenario. Yeah.
Now, I will say this. I absolutely agree with the misplacement of some of the detective scenes throughout the series. There are times, especially when, was it Darren Lynn Bousman? Whoever was editing Saw's like 2 through 4, and I don't know if it was Darren. Okay.
Yeah, it was
he would do this thing where he would have these, and at the time I appreciated them because they were neat transitions. They were something different, but it was like you'd be in the middle of a trap where, again, tension is that rubber band that we're trying to expand until it snaps. But instead, they're going to cut to a scene with the cops. We're like, we figured out whose thumbprint this is. Oh my God, who is it? And then boom, we're back to the trap. And then 5 seconds later, he's walking into a different room saying, guess whose thumbprint this is? Bro, I don't care right now. You can tell me in a couple minutes, but stay here. Stay here in the scene where you're building the tension. Like, this is one of the first things they teach you, man. And sometimes if it hasn't been done by anybody before, maybe there's a good reason to not do it. Not everything needs to be done, or maybe someone did try that before and it didn't turn out too well because it wasn't a great idea.
It's like having, I hate to say it, but it's like having ADHD brain. You know what I mean? Like that squirrel mindset is like too much shit going on.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly what it's like.
I wonder if Darren has ADHD.
maybe he did.
It's like, bro, stay in one.
So and this is James makes fun of me because I am one of the few people who, on its face as a whole, I enjoyed the Star Wars prequels because of all the political nonsense and drama. I like that stuff. So I like police procedurals. Like I can sink my teeth into two detectives just being detectives. So it didn't bother me at first, but I do agree that over time it did start to bog some things down because they would tell more of that story than was necessary. That's where maybe it got too soap opera-y at times, where like that example where it's like, no, just stay in the trap scene We're good. You can feed me this information later, I promise. I'm barely retaining it right now as it is. Can we go back to the bear trap thing helmet, please?
Right, exactly.
It's like somebody trying to talk to me while I'm playing a video game online. Like, yeah, I'm hearing what you're saying, but you're gonna have to tell me again.
Damn well you're not listening.
Just let me focus on what's going on.
Try not to die here. Like, give me a second.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm trying to invest in this near-death experience, and you're like showing me paperwork. What is this?
You're invested in the game. You're trying not to fucking die. Like, that's the whole premise of any fucking game you play. Come on.
Yeah, like, come on, guys. What are we doing here? So, yeah, no, if they don't bring back the cop stuff, I won't miss it. Sure. I think, you know what, really, and we called them out earlier. The more I think back on, like, what were the reasons that got me to be like, you know what, I'm not seeing this in theaters anymore. Some of it was just that Hoffmanator stuff. Like, when it got to a point where the FBI had caught him and he just goes full Jean-Claude Van Damme on everybody. And it's just like, what is this now? I think that was because that wasn't necessarily what I had come for. I had come at the very first movie into this psychological deal where, like, there's not a lot of gore to it. It's all a mystery. What the hell is going on? And they start to ratchet the gore up, and I was fine with that. But once he turned into Michael Myers, I was like, I don't know that if he had trapped those FBI agents and put them through a game, okay, I might have been it. But now it's just like, wait, why is Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson in my Saw movie all of a sudden? What is going on?
I didn't even think about it like that.
He hits him with the Uranagi out of nowhere. And I'm like, what is going on? One of the coolest reveals still, though, when they did the tape, and he said, right now, I can't remember what he said, but like, right now you're feeling trapped or something like that. And they finally, and it's Hoffman's voice in there. Like, that was such a cool moment that was immediately ruined for me within like 10 seconds. I was like, oh, that was cool. Too bad he didn't let it simmer. That's a bummer. Well, there we have it. I think, again, thank you, JoJo, for joining me. This was a great time talking Saw franchise. I can't wait to get back and share my ranking list with you. So, again, everybody, go check out JoJo's top 10. All 10 currently right now. Saw movies ranked in the top 10 traps. JoJo, what else? Anything else you got in the works? You want to tell the folks where they can find? I don't know if you're doing things on social media. Is there anything other than their YouTube channel that they should be following you on?
You guys can follow me on Twitter. You can also follow me on Instagram. Everything, even for YouTube, everything is at unstpbleJ. That is UNSTPBLE, the letter J. And as far as like more content, I will be integrating for those of us within the blind community, because there is a lot of heated discussions at the moment as far as the disabled community. So if you guys would be interested into my takes on things, because I don't believe in ableism, I don't believe in all of the political stances that a lot of people are bitching about. Hence why I'm extremely controversial. But I will be integrating some people with that. And then as far as like new uploads, I will be giving basically like a life update, because a lot of people have been asking questions. Trying not to be nosy, but I know a lot of people are. So I will be getting into more with that as well. So just follow me on my socials, and I will give you guys updates on there. So thank you for having me, Kevin.
Hey, I appreciate you joining. I look forward. We'll have to figure out what the next franchise is or next movie is, but we'll figure this out and have to come back. Well, maybe it'll be next year when the 11th Saw comes out. We can come back and see where that.
Hopefully, it'll be before then.
Yeah, I was gonna say, based on my schedule, it might be the quickest time, but hopefully we can work something in before that. But no, thank you again for joining me, and thank you guys watching right now. Like and subscribe, please. Live every Monday at 6, every Wednesday at 9, and we have new preview reviews and all kinds of videos coming out damn nearly daily at this point. We're working hard. we're putting Stu to work and me. So thank you guys again. Hope you all have a great day or night, whatever you're doing, wherever you are. We'll see you next time, dweebs.